Today's talk is titled Ho'oponopono, Anita's Philosophy. I'll be interviewing Anita Hübscher this morning. Hübscher in German translates to prettier, and I couldn't think of a better introduction. Please welcome Anita, and give us a moment to get set up.
Thanks.
Hi.
Marianne.
Okay.
Good morning. Hi,
Anita,
Andy.
we're so happy that you could be here this morning to share a little bit of your story, your history, and your philosophy.
Thanks, Andy. I'm all excited.
Good. Okay, now I know you're excited. Now you can relax.
I don't know about that.
Okay. I see there's somebody who's waiting to get in, or Andy, if you can admit them. All right. Anita, let's start with a little bit of your childhood history. Tell us about your life in the beginning.
I was born in Belgium, and after 6 months, my parents moved to Switzerland. And because I was unable to sit, they put me in a hospital and they found out that I have a hip dislocation. And so I was at the hospital, it's a children's hospital, and for over a year.
Anita, I'm going to help guide you a little bit before we get to that. Continue with your childhood. I forgot to say something and I apologize. We're going to intersperse samples of photographs of Anita's artwork throughout this slide presentation. Here's one of her pieces. And we already established Switzerland, but can you tell us a little bit about your home territory?
My home territory, I grew up in Schaffhausen, which is a beautiful medieval town along the Rhine. And that's where I went to school and high school. Okay,
and now we're back to that first year of you in the hospital. Tell us about that again.
So I was taken care in that hospital, as I said, for a long time. So because they didn't really figure out what I had, so a pediatrician came to see me incognito, and he told my parents, "You have to take her out immediately." So I was able to go home and live my life like a 2-year-old, learning to talk and walking. And when I came home, there was a little sister. And so that's a picture of.
Here you are off to first grade, maybe?
Yes, with kind of, it's called not a rucksack, but like a backpack, where I even had my blackboard, I guess. I tried to remember, but I forgot. So that's my first day of school.
So you made it through grade school and went on to high school. Do you want to tell us about that?
Also in Schaffhausen. So I don't have to say a lot about that because it's school. And so when I turned 18, then I left. And so that's the town I grew up, the Rhine. So we were living along, I mean, we walked along the Rhine, we swam in the Rhine. It's a great element, as you know.
And a beautiful tourist town, and
yes,
folks gather in plazas.
That's the square. And a lot of tourists came to, of course, to see this beautiful place.
So, Anita, as we like to do, tell us a little bit about your religious involvement in your early days, your family's religion, and how whatever your spiritual practice was affected you in those early days.
Yes, so my mom was Protestant Lutheran, and my dad was like a philosopher. And we had to attend Sunday school at a little church. And here is the church. And when we were in the church, I didn't understand when the pastor went up the staircase to the pulpit. It was glued on the wall. Maybe you can see. So he was preaching and preaching, and I had no clue about God. Who is God? Where is God? What is God? And so I got bored. I was really bored. And the only part of the church was the singing. I loved singing, so that woke me up. So that was my church.
And when you turned 16?
Yes, I got confirmed. It's a big celebration of becoming, like, I don't know, not a church member, but you graduated from the religious upbringing.
Now, Anita, the singing extended beyond church.
Yes, so in high school, we had a French teacher who wanted us to sing. So we stood up at the beginning of the class, and we sang a song. And when the class was finished, we sang another song. And the singing led us to a choir, and we sang in churches. There are beautiful churches in that town in Schaffhausen. So, and then sometimes we sang, we were taking a guitar and we took a little boat and we were sitting along the Rhine and we sang. So that was my youth. Beautiful.
And speaking of the Rhine, that little church was, if this will let me advance, Randy, if you don't mind. Next slide, please. And I see we have another guest waiting to get in. This is a dramatic part of the Rhine.
Yes, and so the church is called the Rhine Falls. Those are the biggest falls in Switzerland, in Europe even. And sometimes it's really high water and sometimes little water. But on this picture, you can see the little boat compared to the falls. And the church I attended was right above the Rhine Falls. So it was pretty a sacred place, I mean.
And speaking of that, I should have mentioned that the photographs that we saw of your little church were taken more recently.
Yes, when it was the memorial service of my mother. And also I have to add, I always found the church the interior very austere. There was nothing to look at it, really, like in Catholic churches. That was my point of view.
Okay, so here's another sample of your work. You became quite a traveler. Before the traveling, though, you decided to pursue a career.
Yes, I left when I was 18. I left to the French part of Switzerland, and I studied library science in this building. It's in Lausanne. And Lausanne, again, is a beautiful old town and along the Lake of Geneva. And I lived there for 11 years with interception. I went to art school for a year. I went to Montreal. And so this part shows Lausanne. And the next one, please. It has wines. That's still the Lake of Geneva. And they get 3 times more sun than usual wines from the sun, from the lake, and from the whole area. It's stored in the soil, kind of. And so it's pretty good wine. I even lived with a winemaker. And that's the view you have when you work in the wines. I never know how to say it in English.
And you, this is a UNESCO site?
Historical, yes, site.
These vineyards must be ancient.
I think so. I don't know how old. Maybe since
maybe back to Roman times.
Existed. Yeah. No, I don't know. Okay. I have no idea.
But you'll notice kind of a theme of water in Anita's life. She has lived by water through her early days and will continue with her closeness to water through the rest of her life, this being Lake Geneva. Okay, so now we can continue with some of your world travels. Randy, we need to have you advance again, please.
So then, after 11 years living around the lake, I left for the US for the first time. I lived on Mackinac Island. And I was working in a fudge shop. And that's how I greeted the customers. At the beginning, I didn't know how to say the word fudge because as a Swiss citizen, I had no idea about fudge. So I said fudge. Yeah, I had a good time on this island, on this beautiful island. And with the money I made, I traveled through the United States by train. And so it was a long trip. And then I spent some time in Mexico. So that was the end of that era.
Back to home to raise a little more money.
Yes.
For your next round of travels.
A lot of money.
And that's where you started, your interest in Zen Buddhism developed.
Yes, I don't really remember when. I think maybe even in the French part, I read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and I kind of learned to live in the moment, but I didn't really know how. So that's when I started kind of being interested in Japanese philosophy. And from there, I planned a trip to Japan by learning some Japanese, but by traveling through the former Soviet Union through Russia, through former Russia. And so here is a picture of the Red Square, La Place Rouge.
Hanging out with some Russian soldiers.
Yes.
Yeah. And in Red Square.
Yes.
These are actually from those days.
Yes.
This is early
It's
90s or?
No, early 80s.
Early 80s,
83.
okay.
So it's
Yeah, right.
40 years. Wow. And that's the Basilica I visited. So it's just a little glimpse about Russia. And then I ended up in Japan. And here we are in Tokyo. And I had a good time too. but it's a story in itself that I'm just talking in a nutshell. My life. It would last for too long.
Right, but in Japan, you did pursue your Buddhist studies?
Yes, so I continued. I met a Zen Buddhist master, and I lived with him or his family for a while. And then I went back to Switzerland to make more money. And so I lived in Japan for almost a half year. So.
And just as a reminder, to make money, you use your librarian skills? Was
Yes,
that where you were
always.
Always?
Yes, until 93. Then I always wanted to visit Hawaii. And I have to tell you, my whole life I was interested in healing. And so Hawaii came into the picture, and I went to Hawaii. That's another story, how I came about to live in Hawaii. And I was looking for a kahuna, and I never found a kahuna. A kahuna is a healer. But I think the Hawaiian spirits were already working on me, because later on I found the Ho'oponopono. And Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian philosophy. It consists of, you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. So you say that constantly in order to cleanse your memory, not the good ones, but all the memories we have in the subconscious. And when you clean them, it's cleaning also the other people's memory. Like if somebody you meet and tells you, oh, I have cancer, so you clean his or her memory about the cancer. You don't heal her, you heal the sentence, the mind. And so you heal that part, and after a while, it's also healing the other programs in the world. I don't know if that makes sense. It took me a long, long time to understand, but it's healing your mind. Instead of living from memory, you live from inspiration, because you make room for space for the divine. And so that's how you live. That's, in a nutshell, again, about Ho'oponopono.
Okay, so just for a moment of breath, this is my favorite of your works, at least the ones that you had photographed. What's its title?
Sailing with the Whale.
Sailing with the Whale. So I thought this also was appropriate in the water theme, and certainly the Hawaiian theme, as well as here in Cambria. So we're going to get to your California time,
Yes.
all the way through now. And in that context, Anita, tell us about how your philosophy helps you deal with your challenges in the current life.
Thanks for the question. As I said, I studied Zen Buddhism just a tiny bit, and living in the moment, but I never knew how to really apply it. And then finally, I understood with Ho'oponopono, I can erase those memories and I can live better in the moment. So that's how I deal also with my disability. that has accompanied me all my life. And since a few years, I'm in the wheelchair. And I had a hard time to accept my wheelchair compared to my life, you know, traveling all the time. And so Ho'oponopono helps me to accept it, to love my wheelchair, even if it was hard, and to accept people are helping me. So I wanted to go back to my time at the hospital. So I just came up with, when I was at the hospital, I was always surrounded by people helping me and being there for me instead of just being with my parents. And so now I'm in a same kind of situation. I'm surrounded by all of you, by Cambria, who have helped me tremendously to enjoy my life. And forever, I'm grateful to you all. Thank you. And that I feel so safe and surrounded by love. Thank you.
Well, Anita, we thank you for letting us share in your life, because it is truly a joy and a pleasure.
And thanks, Andy, for helping me. And thanks, Randy, for helping me too. It was quite an adventure.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.